Chapter 5. Every second counts. The sharp scent of antiseptic clung to the halls of Living Oaks Nursing and Rehabilitation, mixing with the faint, lingering odor of stale air, overused cleaning supplies, and something musty, like old fabric and regret. The quiet beeping of machines hummed in the background, an occasional cough from a patient breaking the silence. It was nearly midnight, and Hannah Castillo was running on nothing but caffeine, exhaustion, and the stubborn will to make it through another shift. Her navy blue scrubs were wrinkled, her sneakers worn down from endless hours of pacing the halls. Strands of her dark brown hair had slipped from the messy bun she had thrown it into that morning. She had meant to redo it hours ago, but when did she ever have time for herself? Her phone sat face down on the counter at the nurse's station, just past the elevators. 3 missed calls. But Hannah wasn't thinking about her phone. She was holding the cold, fragile hand of Mr. Langston, an elderly man who had been at the nursing home longer than most of the staff. His breaths were shallow and ragged, his chest barely moving under the thin hospital blanket. His daughter had promised she would visit. She had sworn she would be here for his final moments. But no one ever came. They always promised. They never showed. Hannah swallowed the lump forming in her throat, whispering, "You're not alone, Mr. Langston." She gently squeezed his hand, even though she wasn't sure he could still feel it, because she knew what it felt like to be abandoned. She never heard her phone buzzing. 3 times, one from Melanie, one from Sophie, one from Jamie. The nurses passing by barely glanced at it. No one called at this hour unless it was an emergency. But Hannah was too lost in grief, exhaustion, and the weight of every unspoken regret to notice. Meanwhile, the lusty leopard pulsed with bass-heavy music, the neon lights flickering against the dimly lit booths. The scent of cheap perfume, sweat, and whiskey clung to the air, mixing with the faint bitterness of cigarette smoke. Derek Castillo sat in his usual spot, beer in hand, eyes locked on Candy as she slid up the pole. With effortless grace, she was the main attraction, long legs, wild blonde curls, and a body that moved like it was built for sin. Derek barely blinked as she reached the top, balancing on one leg upside down before flipping backward into a perfect split. The crowd erupted, throwing bills onto the stage. Derek shot up from his seat, grinning like an idiot as he clapped. That's when his phone slipped from his pocket, hitting the sticky floor beneath the table. He didn't even notice. 3 missed calls. One from Melanie, one from Sophie, one from Jamie. But Derek Castillo wasn't thinking about his daughter. He wasn't thinking about anything except Candy's slow, knowing smirk as she stood up, locking eyes with him. She curled a finger in his direction. And just like that, he was hers, the Castillo house. The 2-bedroom rental at the end of Briarwood Drive looked half abandoned. The porch sagged under years of neglect, the paint had peeled away, and the yard was more dirt than grass. Cracks spiderwebbed across the windows, so old and brittle that even the slightest pressure might shatter them. The front door's rusted screen barely clung to its hinges. The house numbers faded and barely hanging on. It was the kind of house people drove past without a second glance. The kind of place that didn't invite visitors. The kind of place that matched the people inside. Hannah and Derek pulled up at the same time, headlights bouncing off the wreck of a house they called home. Hannah's scrubs were stained, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion. Derek smelled like whiskey, cigarette smoke, and regret. They didn't have to say it to know what they were both thinking. Where the hell have you been? But before either of them could accuse the other, their phones buzzed in unison. Missed calls. Melanie, Sophie, Jamie, a chill ran down Hannah's spine. Derek frowned, rubbing the back of his neck. What the hell? Then, before they could process it, red and blue lights flooded the street. A police car pulled up, the engine rumbling as it rolled to a stop in front of the weathered, sagging house. The driver's door opened, and in that moment everything changed. The patrol car Crestmore Police Department's emblem gleamed under the glow of the flickering street lamp, casting long shadows over the cracked pavement. Detective Kimberly Stanton, Officer Greg Morrison exchanged a glance before stepping out. Standing on the overgrown sidewalk, Hannah and Derek Castillo squinted against the harsh glare of the headlights. Hannah's stomach twisted, exhaustion weighing her down as she took a hesitant step toward the officers. A mother's instinct told her something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. And behind her, Derek marched forward with irritation burning in his eyes, already assuming the worst. Confrontation on the porch, Mr. and Mrs. Castillo. Officer Morrison asked, his voice firm but professional. Derek crossed his arms. Yeah, what's it to you? He snapped. What kind of trouble did Abby get herself into this time? Hannah shot him a glare and threw out an arm, pressing a firm hand against his chest to keep him from stepping closer. What's going on, Officer Morrison? She asked, her voice tight with concern. Is Abby okay? Inside the patrol car, Melanie, Sophie, and Jamie sat in the back seat, their faces pale and drawn. Detective Stanton turned toward them. Just stay calm, she instructed. The girls nodded in unison, with a steadying breath. Detective Stanton adjusted the badge clipped to her belt, pulled a notepad from her blazer pocket, and stepped onto the sidewalk. I'm Detective Kimberly Stanton, and this is Officer Greg Morrison. Her tone was measured and professional, yet firm. She studied Hannah's exhausted expression, and Derek's barely contained irritation. Have either of you seen or spoken to Abby since 9 p.m., she asked. Hannah's brows furrowed. She shook her head slowly. No, I've been at work all night. I haven't heard from her. Derek scoffed, rubbing the back of his neck. I haven't either, but let me guess, she ran off somewhere? Probably pouting over some drama. Detective Stanton's sharp gaze didn't waver. Is there a chance she could be inside the house? Hannah's breath caught in her throat. The idea of Abby being inside, safe and asleep, was the only thing holding her together. I don't know. She might be, Hannah admitted. Would you allow us to check? Stanton asked. Hannah nodded immediately. Of course, yes. Please. Derek grumbled something under his breath, fishing out his keys and stomping toward the door. With shaky hands, he unlocked it and pushed it open, revealing the dark, silent house. Officer Morrison pulled a flashlight from his belt. I'll check inside. As he disappeared into the shadows, a tense silence fell between the remaining three. Hannah twisted her hands together. Derek shifted from foot to foot, his frustration replaced with something he wasn't willing to call fear. Minutes stretched into eternity. Finally, Officer Morrison stepped back onto the porch, shaking his head. No one's home. A cold dread slithered down Hannah's spine. The moment of truth, Detective Stanton took a deep breath, choosing her next words carefully. Mr. and Mrs. Castillo, Abby has been reported missing. For a moment, everything went completely silent. Hannah's knees buckled, and she caught herself against the porch railing. No, she whispered, shaking her head furiously. No, she's not missing. She's just not home. She's probably at Melanie's house or Jamie's. She never made it to Melanie's house, Stanton interrupted gently. Hannah's face twisted in anguish. But she was supposed to, she would have. Her breath hitched as she tried to make sense of it. Derek, on the other hand, exploded. This is bullshit, he snapped, his voice sharp like a blade. Abby probably just took off for the night. She's been acting out ever since. He caught himself before he could say it, before he could bring up Givian. Stanton lifted an eyebrow. Ever since what, Mr. Castillo? Derek clenched his jaw. Nothing. She's just been dramatic lately. She'll turn up. So this isn't just a case of a runaway teenager, Stanton pressed. Oh, so now you know my daughter better than I do. Derek barked. Abby's tough. She's smart. She's not missing. She just, his words faltered. Reality was closing in on him, and he didn't like the way it made his chest feel tight and suffocating. Hannah suddenly let out a sharp, choked sob. Derek turned to her, his anger dissolving into helplessness. Hannah! She covered her mouth with both hands, her whole body shaking. Detective Stanton and Officer Morrison exchanged a glance. This was always the hardest part, breaking the moment when denial turned to despair. Finally, Stanton softened her tone. We need your cooperation, she said. Every minute counts. Hannah slowly nodded, her tears streaming freely now. What do you need? I'll do anything. Derek hesitated, his shoulders tense. But when he looked at Hannah falling apart, he sighed and finally nodded. Fine, he muttered. Tell us what to do. Stanton pulled out her notepad. First, we need to ask you both some questions about Abby's last known whereabouts, friends, and anyone she might have been in contact with recently. She glanced at Officer Morrison. Let's start with Abby's family dynamic. Derek stiffened. Hannah let out a shaky breath, and just like that, the interrogation began.